Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Matthew Terry, a Democrat who is running to unseat the incumbent Republican State Representative Randy Hunt in the 5th Barnstable District. The district covers all of the town of Sandwich, plus precincts in the towns of Bourne, Plymouth, and Barnstable. Matthew Terry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with you introducing yourself to voters. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Sandwich. My parents moved to Sandwich from Falmouth in the 70s, chiefly because of the school system there, like pretty much an entire generation of families did. And I went through the Sandwich Public Schools, K to 12. After that, I went to Yale for college, law school at Boston College, and then I practiced law in Boston for a while at two law firms, Goodwin Proctor, and then 7 years at Ropes and Gray. Moved back to the Cape a few years ago. Once my daughter Riley, whose birthday it is today, by the way, she turned 3. Once she got mobile, we needed more space, and I thought, what better place to raise kids than Cape Cod? I know firsthand that it's a great place to grow up.
Now tell us about why you decided to run for state representative.
Well, when I moved back to the Cape, I didn't like what I saw, what had changed in the last 10 years. It seems to me like people on the Cape and in my district in particular are really struggling to make ends meet. And the state government in particular can do a much better job in helping people on Cape Cod. Cape Cod helps the state government a lot. We send $700 million a year in various revenues up to the State House, and they only give us $30 million back. So that's a huge disparity, and I think you can see it in the day-to-day lives on Cape Cod. Folks are really getting pinched when it comes to property taxes and utilities. And we just saw the news that electric rates are set to increase significantly over the winter. And we have not been getting the return on our tax dollars that we're sending up that can really help make a difference in people's day-to-day lives. And that's something where I think when I get up to Beacon Hill, I can make a difference in year one. So I started looking pretty seriously at running a couple of years ago and had been laying the groundwork ever since. The race has been great. The campaign has a ton of momentum. People are really hungry for a change here locally, and they know that things can't continue on the way they're going. Lots and lots of people, I think, are getting squeezed out of Cape Cod. If you drive down Route 6 towards the bridges at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, you have traffic leaving Cape Cod because it's people that work here but can't afford to live here, and I think that needs to change.
Now, you mentioned the economy. What other big issues are there in the district that you think you could help with if you were elected state representative?
Well, I think the biggest thing locally that I could help with that's really been lagging in the last 10 years or so is, property tax rates increasing every year. Towns increasingly relying on their residents to fund year-to-year operations. I'm on the finance committee in the town of Sandwich, and I can tell you that Sandwich's budget is incredibly tight, and I know that the other towns in the district, it's the same thing. The state reps, really their most important job is to go up to Beacon Hill and get our money back, because otherwise somebody else, some other state rep from some other part of the state is going to take it. To use Sandwich as an example, we start every municipal budget year in debt, right, in the red, and we need to close the gap and get to a balanced budget. So, we start $500,000 or so in the red, and going up to Beacon Hill and being an effective state rep means bringing tax dollars back and bringing, let's say, $1 million a year back to this district, $2 million, which is an achievable number, is the difference in the towns in our district a lot of years between raising property taxes and not. And so that's the kind of thing I want to bring to the voters in the district so that they have a little bit more comfort that year to year they don't have to be worried about not just paying their property taxes, but how much they're going to go up the following year.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking with Matt Terry of Sandwich, who is running for state representative in the 5th Barnstable District. He is a Democrat seeking to unseat the Republican incumbent Randy Hunt. Now, you mentioned a couple of big issues on the Cape in regards to the economy that you could help with if you were elected and went up to Beacon Hill. Now, one thing we talk about a lot here is the wastewater issue, cleaning up our estuaries. It continues to be one of the biggest issues in the region. How could you help with that?
Well, the estimates for the solutions to our wastewater challenges are scary numbers, right? They're kind of numbers that are even hard to comprehend. They're in the billions. And that's the kind of thing where the state has to play a larger role. We are an asset for the entire Commonwealth. I mentioned the tax numbers earlier, the amount of revenue we send from our economy and our tourism economy. And so the state needs to be a bigger partner in solving these issues. So for wastewater in specific, when we start to implement some of these solutions, residential and commercial taxpayers on Cape Cod can't shoulder the entire burden. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't be expected to shoulder the majority of the burden because we are putting in place solutions that are designed in part to accommodate the tourism industry. When we build a wastewater solution locally, we have to design it for peak capacity, which is during the summer, and then the rest of the year it is underutilized. But we have to pay that for the Cadillac version because of our population explosion in the summer months. And that, again, is to benefit the state. So when I go up to Beacon Hill, I'm going to advocate strongly for the state being a larger partner, and they'll listen to reason because challenges that we're facing like wastewater, like beach erosion, our infrastructure challenges locally, those are all going to start to impact our economy and our tourism economy in specific if it hasn't already. And that ultimately will impact the state's revenue. And on Beacon Hill, they really only speak the language of money. And so that is going to be incredibly persuasive. I don't think that they have made that logical conclusion yet. But that will be the argument that I will be making to them day in and day out until they're tired of hearing it, that it's in their own best interest to take better care of Cape Cod and to help us implement some of these solutions to significant problems we have.
Now, another issue, the opiate abuse epidemic, something that affects crime, our families, quality of life on the Cape. Your opponent, the incumbent, Randy Hunt, has done a lot on this issue. What could you do as state rep? Are there different ways to tackle this problem?
I like the attention that's been brought to this issue across the Commonwealth in general and Cape Cod in specific in the last couple of years. And I'm very concerned about this issue. When I talk to police officers across my district, they say that 90% of their calls and crime in the district are attributable to 10% of the people, if not less, and that a lot of those folks are struggling with an addiction of one kind or another. I do think that one thing that I want to do a little bit differently is actually bring some resources to bear. Representative Hunt had a bill passed in this session that established a couple of permanent committees. He also filed a bill to fund those committees to the tune of $250,000. And he was unable to secure that funding for his own projects. And that's the kind of thing where I think my training up at these big Boston law firms has taught me to be the squeakiest wheel possible. And in my fight for resources, I will absolutely work to get funding for opiate addiction programs and studies down here on Cape Cod. And it's something where, because of the way politics work in Boston, in my first year, I'm going to have a very good shot at making that happen, something that folks in my district haven't been the beneficiaries of in over a dozen years.
Another big issue all over the Cape, but especially perhaps in your district, traffic. People talk about a third bridge, different other solutions to the problem. Any thoughts on the traffic issue?
Well, it was one thing that I noticed when I moved back was that even though the population on the Cape has declined slightly in recent years, traffic seems to have gotten worse. When I was growing up, I never had to wait through a light more than once unless it was, peak tourism season. I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about it mostly really for the quality of life of the year-round residents. I need to hear more about the third bridge. I think it's a good idea in general, especially since the Sagamore and Bourne bridges are 80 years old and are pretty much constantly under repair. But I remember the Sagamore flyover, and that was supposed to be the solution to traffic woes at the Sagamore Bridge, and that has proven to be completely untrue. So that was a lot of money spent for and businesses displaced for what seems like fairly small returns. And so I'm naturally a little bit skeptical when someone says that the next great solution is going to be a third bridge.
Another issue we hear about a lot, the problem of young people leaving the Cape. You've referred to it a little bit in your talk about the economy and how to help people locally be able to afford to live here. Any thoughts about the exodus of young people and how you might be able to help?
Absolutely. It's a huge looming crisis. And since that's my demographic, I know firsthand exactly how hard it is to move to Cape Cod and get a start. I have lots of friends that I grew up with who would love to move back home, but they can't because the jobs aren't here, and it's really expensive to buy a house, and it's expensive to live here. So what I would like to do when I get up to Beacon Hill is work on implementing some of these solutions. We know what the problem is. The Cape Cod Young Professionals and the Chamber of Commerce have done a great job in diagnosing what our challenges are. And so now is the time to start working on solutions. And the state government has to play a role in that. When I get up there, I want to focus on creating jobs on Cape Cod, trying to encourage new industry. One of the challenges is that since we have two pinch points in the Sagamore and the Bourne Bridge, we need to be creative about the kind of industries we bring down, because any industry that needs to get stuff on or off of Cape Cod is going to be challenged starting businesses here. So we need to think of tech and other industries that can essentially set up shop anywhere. And if you can do that, what better place than Cape Cod? The state can help grant tax incentives and create development zones. I'd love to do a marketing program to advertise to folks both in Massachusetts and elsewhere to come live and raise families on Cape Cod.
And in the less than a minute we have left, do you have any final message to leave with voters?
I do. I think the voters in my district, more than anything, really need to get a couple wins under our belt. There have just been one thing after another, challenges faced, unanticipated costs that have come up that I think have really knocked us for a loop. And so what I would like to do on Beacon Hill is to change that momentum around so that folks feel like we're heading in the right direction. I'm out talking to voters every day, and I can tell you that there aren't too many folks who are optimistic about what's happened locally in the last 10 years and where we're going for the next 10. And I think we need to turn that around immediately, and I think we can. And the voters are really desperate for it.
And that's all the time we have. Thank you, Matt, so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I've been talking to Matthew Terry, a Democrat who is running to unseat the incumbent Randy Hunt, a Republican in the 5th Barnstable District. Election day is November 4th, and we're talking to local candidates in contested races in the shows leading up to the election. To listen to all the interviews, go to our website, capecod.com. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.